On my college campus, the credit card companies are there giving every student a pre-approved credit card so you can get hooked on it.
I was in school and I remember it as of today. I had a teacher telling to my mom, your son will never gonna achieve anything significant in his life. And now I'm developing a 5 apartments building right next to that school.
One day I went with my dad. He worked in the oil fields. When he got back in the truck, he said, hey, so you see those guys right there? That's what happens if you don't go to college.
We're just like a school teacher. We're just teaching a different subject.
YA students work for C students, and the B students work for the government. That was something that I was trying all the time to give to people, that they had this mindset.
How many people do you know today, even if they are employees, that they do work on what they got as a college degree?
80% don't work in the field they get a degree in. Today we're going to talk about education. We're going to talk about formal education versus other forms of education, because obviously what we're doing here at Life Mastery is we're in the education business. So I know for me, I went to school. I was born and raised Catholic, so I went to Catholic grade school, high school, and university. And I got a typical American education, and by the way, I was told if you don't go to college and you don't get a degree, you're never going to amount to anything. I remember getting out of high school and not wanting to go to college, but wow, there was a lot of peer pressure in my family, so I went and got my degree, and college taught me how to be independent. I had to get up on time, I had to be in class on time, I had to turn in my assignments, but it really, the actual classes, I don't know that I learned that much. I certainly didn't learn anything to help me with my career. And it's weird because the only reason I went was because I thought it was going to benefit my career. Now, that was a long time ago. I know I look youthful, but I'm not. And when my daughters, who are now 24 and 28, when they went to college, I won't even tell you how much I paid for their college education. To me, it was startling. It was 400% more, 500% more than I paid for mine. And I just and I look at now, Monica's got young kids, I'm remarried and I've got young kids. I mean, I can't imagine what a college education is going to cost 10 years from now in the United States.
Yikes.
And quite frankly, I don't know that it's worth it. So what do you guys think? What do you think about formal education as opposed to other types of education?
Yeah, and it's very funny we have this conversation today because a week ago, my wife's, niece, she went to New York. I don't remember the name of the university. But I remember that. I know that her parents spent just for her to go to, expenses to go to New York, find a place to live. Yeah. She's going to stay there for 4 years. Yeah. So they spent already like $50,000, to take her there.
Oh, easy.
So I bet it's going to cost them $250,000 maybe for
that's
minimum
for
the
sure.
Next 4 years in New York.
In New York.
In New York, yeah. And the $1 billion question is, do I spend $250,000 to go and educate myself in a college, or do I spend this money investing in a good business or creating my own business?
Right.
So that's a $1 billion question, and I got to say I believe in education. What I personally don't believe too is teaching me or my kids what you want to teach them.
Well, I got to stop and I go, I look at my own education, and, I remember being in high school and sitting here going, I'm learning the same subjects in high school I learned in grade school, then going to college, and it was basically the same subjects. I mean, how much history, how much science, how much, especially if you're not going to specialize in it. And then, not recently, 20 years ago, I remember reading about Rockefeller, who's starting the General Education Fund in the United States. And he's the one who spent millions of dollars back then, was a tremendous amount of money, to create the basic curriculum that everyone in America has learned for the last 100 years. And Rockefeller wanted to raise a generation of employees so he could employ them. He, quote unquote, didn't want free thinkers. Now, I don't know, like when I was sending my daughters to college, I hadn't learned that information. So why would I send my kids to college and spend a fortune so they can become employees and that's not what I want for my children. And not only that, they're also nowadays more than ever being taught a certain ideology. I feel like my kids, to a degree, were brainwashed to the political ideology of what that university believed in, or those professors believed in. So I sent them there believing they should get an education. Now with my current children, my wife and I, my second wife, our boys are 9 and 12, and the last thing I want to do is send them to college. I want to spend a lot of money on their education, but not in college. And I know you've got
I've got
girls.
a 5 and a 9-year-old, and the thing that was different is, me growing up was the same thing. Hey, you got to go to school, you got to get an education, you got to go to college. I still remember to this day that one day I went with my dad. He worked in the oil fields, and one day we drove out like 4 hours to where he was, where he was working at, and I thought, he's like, oh, I just need to go pick up something really quick, a 4-hour drive. So we end up going there. And we were there for about 2 hours, and I stayed in the truck. I was watching the workers, all filled with oil and everything like that. And then when he got back in the truck, he said, "Hey, so you see those guys right there? That's what happens if you don't go to college." And
which I get it.
Yeah, and again, he was trying to protect me.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, "Oh wow, okay. I guess I got to go to college," But and now for my kids, it's a little bit different because, like I mentioned previously on another episode, that I didn't grow up with Think and Grow Rich, with Rich Dad Poor Dad, a lot of those types of things. Now with my girls, we just ordered the Cash Flow Quadrant game.
Yeah,
because we want to start playing that.
Yeah.
For Sophia, my daughter, I just
Kiyosaki, if people
Robert
don't know.
Kiyosaki,
Yeah.
right? For Sophia, my daughter, one book that's had a major impact also for me was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yep.
So I just ordered it, How to Win and Influence People for Teenage Girls.
That's
and,
so cool.
So it's just introducing. So for me, it's still kind of like a balance type thing that, yes, I think some education is good, especially
Sure.
right now.
Yeah.
But at the same time with colleges, it's one of those things where you really got to figure out, like, do you want that, ideology being taught to them? And especially there in Texas, like, you've got, either whatever school, a number of schools. But yeah, I think as long as you can give them a good balance to where they can think on their own as well. And that's what I've been, I think with your daughters, Alex and Nicole, they got a healthy dose of, the teachings you do at home, and they would come at events. I'd see them at events. So they'd listen to them, and my daughters listen to you, whether I'm, editing videos, editing audios, so they know, pay attention, get excited, never quit.
Yeah, the thing that's crazy, you remember Dr. Charles King, who was got his PhD from Harvard, but then he was a university professor, University of Illinois, Chicago for many years, a really prestigious school. And he said to me, I remember when my kids were going to college, he goes, school should teach your children how to think, how to learn,
Right.
but it shouldn't brainwash them and just give them information,
Right.
which is kind of what you're talking about. So let me pause. There's one thing I got to mention while we're doing this. We're talking a little bit higher basic education. Kids need to learn to read,
Yeah,
write,
absolutely.
math. You can't be dependent upon a calculator. You should know how to do math. And I have a really good friend, a friend, Scotty in Alabama, who's the chaplain for the football team there. I'm a big Alabama football fan. But Scotty runs a foundation. He taught me something that I had no idea that had a big impact on me, and I love supporting his foundation because they teach kids how to read check this out. If a child doesn't know how to read properly by the time they're in third grade, they're done. Because every other thing they learn in school, they have to be able to read the book to learn science, learn math. So the statistics about how many of those kids who don't know how to read by third grade ending up in jail, startling,
really?
like unbelievable. So for sure, your young children need to go to school and learn how to read and write and do basic things, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all 100%. We're talking about once you get into the secondary school or high
Yeah.
school and things become overly repetitive, unless you're going to be a doctor or, you know, and you really need all that science, unless you're going to be an accountant and you really need all that math. Is that really the way to go, especially for what it costs these days?
Yeah, and you know, say something because
About the basic education, I mean, I totally agree, but it's funny how, I mean, during our time when we have been in school, about the brainwash that Mark said earlier. I mean, I remember when I was in school, I wasn't the best student, and because of the brainwash from the good students or the family, I started thinking at some time that what I'm going to do in my life. I mean, I'm not going to be successful.
yeah, it's too much of competition.
Yeah, I don't know
Right.
now times how it is in school, but that's a conversation that I have very often with friends of mine that they were good students. I mean, and they got a good degree and they came back and they got a good job. And when I started in the entrepreneurship career and we had this discussion, it's a big argue always with this kind of guys. And I remember one of the books that I have read and inspired me a lot, and I'm trying to give these books to many people in order to start thinking that it's not just the formal education. It's from Robert Kiyosaki, who IA students work for C students and the B students work for the government. That was something that I was trying all the time to give to people, that they had this mindset that if you don't have a formal education, you are not going to succeed
I
in
think
life.
the main issue is that
I want to get back to that, though. That's good.
yeah, I think the main issue with education is that it's almost exactly the same as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
60, 70
60 years ago.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the world is not the same. So
Right.
you are teaching people the same things in a different world.
Right.
You are
Right.
teaching, you know,
Right.
you are giving them the same manual, but the vehicle is different.
Oh,
so how
so
can I
different.
apply this manual to, you know, to a
And
different
that
vehicle?
affects a lot. I mean, even the biking system changed, but they are the people who studying
First of all,
biking.
they're not teaching finances.
Well, first of all,
Yeah.
let's go to your basic point. You're right. Like, the world has changed dramatically. But here's the thing. When I was in school, when you were in school, no one taught us finances. No one
Yeah,
taught us how to
exactly.
balance your checkbook. No one told us not to use a credit card. I remember when my oldest daughter was, I think, in third grade, they asked me to go and talk to her class. So I brought in, these are third graders. So what are they, 8 years old? And I brought in like a crisp $20 bill for every one of them. And I go, how many of you want a $20 bill? And I handed them all $20 bills. And I go, cool. Now what's going to happen is you can keep that $20 bill, but I'm going to come back. And when I come back, you have to give me $100. And they were like, oh, what a ripoff. That's not cool. And then I pulled out a credit card. I go, well, that's how it
what
works.
this is,
Never
yeah.
use one of these
Right.
because
Yeah.
they literally, you know what's even worse? On my college campus, the credit card companies are there giving every student a pre-approved credit card so you can get hooked on it. It's like a drug dealer giving you a free sample.
Yeah.
It blows my mind what we don't learn.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
relationships. Like how about the love languages or Mars are for men, women are from Venus thing. Like none of that gets taught. But you do know how to factor X out of anything.
Yeah.
You know, that's driven me crazy forever.
Yeah, I remember in our previous event, you know, the last event we had with Robert Kiyosaki, and I know it sounds tough, but let's be real. You know, he said teachers are criminals.
That
you
was
know,
a little strong.
he's-
It was a little strong. Here's what I'm saying. Not all teachers are criminals,
No.
but some of them are. And I got to say this, you know, I have a personal experience. I remember I was around 14, 15 years old. I was in school, and I remember it as of today. I had a teacher telling me right in my face, in front of my mother, telling to my mom, your son will never gonna achieve anything significant in his life. Now, here's the question. Based on whose qualifications and standards,
Yeah.
Right.
you are making that declaration, right?
Yeah.
Because
Can we tag that teacher in this podcast?
I saw him yesterday.
Oh.
I said I didn't talk to him, but
Was he a
here
server?
is the funny.
Were you in your
Okay.
Mercedes?
Yeah, no. I was driving my Mercedes, and that school, I saw that teacher at the same school that he told me that phrase. Okay,
Yeah.
and now I'm developing a 5 apartments building right next to that school.
That's funny.
So
And
the name
I
of the
went-
building has to be the name
Yeah,
of the
And
Yeah.
I went there for a meeting, and I saw that teacher right next to me.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Who years ago he told me, you know,
Yeah.
You never met.
and I was about to
Saying
tell
the same
him,
thing
hey,
to somebody else.
look, you know, but you know,
Well, I think teachers don't realize how much students put into what they say. Like a lot of kids' self-esteem. We've all been a breakthrough. We're born to win, then programmed to lose. And I know that. Here's what's the sad part. I know that teacher was trying to motivate you to be a better student. He wasn't intentionally trying to be nasty to ruin your self-esteem. You know, and I do have to say, I heard what you just said. I think most teachers are the most overworked, underpaid people in the world. As a matter of fact, I think most teachers I know are like real heroes. Like
Yeah.
they love the kids and
Oh,
they're
yeah.
doing everything they can. But they're again, this is not to bash teachers. It's the institutions.
the
It's the
Yeah.
curriculum of what they're doing, because in reality we're just like a school teacher. We're just teaching a different subject. So again, when you come to our events, we are going to talk about finances. We are going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about controlling your thoughts so you control your emotions. We're going to talk about habits. We're going to talk about the stuff that really leads to results in your life, how to set a goal, how to create a plan of action. Again, think about if that was taught to us when we're in school. But if you go back to what I said earlier about Rockefeller, they didn't want to create a nation of free-thinking entrepreneurs or a world of free-thinking entrepreneurs. They wanted to create a bunch of people that could work for them and do what they're told. And again, if we've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Kiyosaki is very clear. People, they buy you wholesale, sell you retail. The biggest reason why people get a job, and I know a lot of people listening have a job, so we're not trying to be mean, but if you read his book, he'll say most people have a job because they're fearful. They afraid of going out on their own. So that's okay. If you're going to be an employee, it's okay to be an employee. But what if you could come to an event and we could teach you how to get rid of fear? What if that was possible? So you didn't make fear-based decisions anymore. What an incredible way to live your life. And then maybe you would decide you don't want to work for someone anymore. You know what I mean? Because it's not just the money when you're an entrepreneur. You can do whatever you want whenever you want. Your time is free. So again, I love education. I remember, again, going back to when I was in school. I want to talk to what you said for a minute. You're trying to give your friends these books, and they don't want them. You know why? Because we're brainwashed to think I graduated college. That's it. I got everything I need. Where you got to be shitting me. The books we're talking about are way more important than the textbooks that people get in university. But we don't know what we don't know. I look back at my life. I got dragged to my first seminar. As a matter of fact, most of you guys know the story. My friend Lori, who was an attractive young lady back then, I barely knew her, and she invited me to go, and I thought she wanted to hook up. That's why I went to that's the truth of why I went to my first event. And as soon as I walked in the room, she was there, and she gave me a big smile and introduced me to her fiance, which I didn't know she was engaged. So I
you
went to
learned
my,
something there.
I did learn something, not to assume.
pure education.
Yeah.
But thank God, because if I hadn't gone to that event, I would have never read Think and Grow Rich. I would have never done any of this stuff, most likely. And I would have just walked around like a lot of people, deluded thinking because I have a college degree, I have all the education I need. The truth is, the most successful people never stop learning. Never. It's a lifelong thing. So to your point, I think you said it on the last podcast, you know, how can you go to one real estate class and go, okay, I'm done?
Yeah.
Like, you got to be kidding me. In the book Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell says a statistical outlier, someone who's
Yeah.
like a Grant Cardone, let's say, has put over 10,000 hours into doing what we're doing. So the average, and this is the problem, this pisses me off about what's online, is you have all these gurus going, I'll teach you how you can work 2 hours a day and it's like bullshit. The truth is, you know how you get rich? You work your ass off. You know how you become great at something? You immerse yourself in that thing. And here's the deal. If you really study humans and Maslow and a hierarchy of needs, one of the things that makes a human being feel more joy and fulfillment is learning and growing. So if you look at all the people that are depressed, there's more depressed people in the world now than ever. You know why? Because people aren't growing and learning because they don't think they need to. They make fun of people that are coming to our seminars. They make fun of you if you're reading a book. So you have to be able to separate yourself from the crowd because the average person is the average person. If you look in a dictionary under average, one of the definitions is the highest degree of poor. So if you're average, you're phenomenal at being pathetic. You're incredible at being terrible. So our goal is to show people how to live an above average life. You how to live a great life. And again, you're not going to get it in an education in a university. I'm sorry, you're just not going to get it.
Yep, you need something extra, you know, it's not enough. Very basics. They're doing the same things for 30, 40 years. And I agree with you. I'm not, you know, I will repeat this because I want people to understand it. I didn't say teachers are criminals, but I said some teachers are criminals, just like, you know, some policemen are criminals.
Right.
And, you know.
Yeah.
But here's what I believe. You got to choose what kind of education you want to get for yourself.
Yeah.
You can't educate yourself whatever they want to teach you and believe whatever they tell you.
Right.
So I do believe that there are some, you know, colleges and some educational organizations. For example, you want to be a musician, right? There are some specific schools that you go there and you get the specific education that you need and you get out of that school and you know how to play the piano, you know how to play the guitar. But then you go to those generic ones and you learn the same things again and again and again and you get that college degree. But here's the question, how many people do you know today, even if they are employees, that they do work on what they got as a college degree? I mean, what's the percentage?
80% don't work in the field they get a degree in. To your point, I'm not sure how it works in Europe, but I bet it's the same. So in America, I majored in a certain subject, and go to what you're saying. So let's say I want to be an accountant. Well, why am I not only taking accounting classes? Why am I taking history and science? But again, you know why? Because you have to pay for the classes. So if I only took the classes I needed to work in that field, I'd pay 20% of the tuition. So again, I guess we are bashing universities. I don't think we're going to get a university
I want to say something
as a
Not
sponsor.
teachers. Not, I mean, it's kind of what
Not
you were saying.
teachers.
Yeah, what you were saying is like, you know, the teachers are the ones that the kids look up to. And I still remember all my teachers. And then like with my daughters, it's great when you do have a teacher that supports them. And, you know, Sophia just sent me a video while we were here where her teacher gave her like a little prize thing and just wrote on there everything that she does amazing, awesome. Like every morning you come in with a, you know, full of happiness and a smile, and you're always, you know, so Sophia is now like, oh my God, my teacher's the best, you know, this and that, you know, so they do have a very strong impact on you know, the way you think and everything like
there's,
that. Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Oh, yeah.
I'll also say this, like, again, I'm talking about universities.
Right.
So my daughters both went to private Christian grade school and high school. My boys right now, the oldest one is now going to a private Christian middle school. So I believe I'm going to spend money on my kids' education, but I want to spend it in grade school and middle and high school because the truth is they're pretty developed. By the time you get to 18, that foundation is already set.
Right.
And it's important to me. And again, I'm not putting my religious beliefs on anyone. If you're, you know, Muslim or Jewish or whatever you send them to whatever kind of school you want to send them to. But I think if you're going to spend money on your kids, do it on their earlier years, getting them a private education, because it really does matter. Being educated is important. Learning certain things is very, very valuable. But I think what people need to know is it's just not enough. Because even in these great private schools that we're sending our kids to, they're still not learning about balancing a checkbook, about credit cards, about all the stuff we talked about earlier. So if you're not going to become a lifelong learner and read all these books, I forget who was saying it, but you think about it. Someone takes their whole entire life, 25, 30 years, they learn some incredible things about real estate, about investing, about weight management, about nutrition, whatever the subject might be, and they take their whole life and put it into 250 or 300 pages. And you and I can just talk about collapsing time frames. Instead of taking 25 years, we can read their book in a week or two and we have all that information. It blows my mind that people don't think they need that. And here's the truth. This is why we're in business. Most people aren't going to read all those books. Most people aren't going to do this. So we take in all, I don't know about you, I know we all read like crazy and we're watching videos and going to live seminars. So you take all the information in, then our goal is to take what's applicable to the average person and teach it so they can live a better quality life. Because the truth is most of them aren't going to read all those books.
Yeah.
So we can boil it down into digestible information. So we've kind of come to the end of this podcast. But again, we're here just telling you how we feel, guys. We're always going to keep it real. Hopefully you respect that. If we said anything that irritates you, actually that's probably not a bad thing, because we just want to spark conversation. Free speech is a beautiful thing, and we're just here telling you what we believe in, but more importantly, sincerely trying to share something that can make your life better. They say dumb people don't learn from their mistakes. Smart people do learn from mistakes, but brilliant people learn from other people's mistakes. So we're just sharing with you a bunch of our life experiences, and hopefully what we said today can help you and your family live a better life.